Hi, I'm Bobby Neal Jackson. I am the Chief Productivity Officer of Synergy Works Consulting. I'm about to be on the Prosperity uh, online show, and you can expect to hear how you can have a purpose-based, people-led approach to your life and your business listening to this episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a true powerhouse in the world of leadership and productivity. Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Prosper. I appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. We're going to be learning everything leadership and productivity, the very two things that are not only buzzwords, but things that actually move the economy. And for those that are just tuning in, Bobby here is not just a professional leader or speaker and author. He's also a maestro of growth and efficiency. He's going to be telling us about his systems, his processes, and how he combines all of that with the people, not only the people in his life, because as you will find out, he has a big family, but also the people that actually help you manage your business. Now, Bobby, I could go on and on speaking about your accolades and everything else, but that defeats the purpose of having you on the show today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you to actually dive into the realms of leadership and productivity.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity. So, what really got me into leadership, I could take it all the way back to my childhood. Um, just every time I'd be on a team, every time I would be leading a group or in a group, anything like that, people were looking to me. It wasn't until a little bit later on in life, due to the way that I would say my family started. I had to go straight into a career, a job, just getting a paycheck. My wife and I started out very young, and I had a child on the way, and I had to go get to work. So, at 18, I was working at a paper plant, full-time job, working 80 hours a week, and needed to support my family. So, I didn't really get a chance to focus on leadership until a few years later. I was about 23, 24, and I was put in my first leadership position as a supervisor in that same paper plant. And then I was also at 24 years old, voted as a deacon in my church. So I became a leader very early in ministry, but then also in the professional realm. And then I was also a youth leader in the church as well. So I was exposed very early on to leadership. And then as my career developed, as I developed what I would consider in my personal life, spiritual life, I began to take on more and more responsibility, was put in more roles for leadership. And eventually, I ended up as a process and quality manager for a construction company, over 2 decades later. So that's where I would say I really started getting into and leaning into my leadership capabilities, learning, getting more in tune, having a lot more self-awareness about the things that I was providing. In parallel with that, I was also starting more ministries. I ended up interim pastoring a couple churches during that time, and then eventually joined a work that was just starting out and kind of helped grow that and build that church at the same time. So it seems like a lot of those things were kind of happening and growing at the same time. And that's, like I said, about 7 years ago was when I really started to lean into that. And after becoming a quality manager, process manager at a construction company, started to realize there was a lot more to the leadership thing, and noticed that I was getting a lot of results with my approach. About that time, I started to realize, you know what, there's a lot more, not just to do, but a lot more to learn. And so I really started to become more of an avid reader, started studying a lot, and that propelled me, along with what I consider to probably be one of the greatest things that I did, which was one day I was reading Proverbs chapter 1, and I noticed that it kept going back to get understanding, get wisdom, learn, and just this message over and over again over the first three books or three chapters of Proverbs. And it wasn't just a spiritual thing. I realized it crosses lines into personal, professional realm as well. And so I just started learning as much as I possibly could, studying as much as I possibly could. I'm up to the point now where I think I'm reading between 20 and 30 books a year. I've been doing that for the last 3 years. I take one chapter of Proverbs. I read it every day because there's 31 chapters in Proverbs. And so I read one chapter a day, and I've been doing that for the last 7 years. And I try to pick one truth out of that. And what I've noticed about the book of Proverbs is it crosses a boundary. It's not just about somebody who believes necessarily exactly in line with what I would teach with the Bible, but there's just a lot of good life practical principles there. And I started to apply those and really think and meditate on those things. And my professional life, my personal life, everything just excelled from there. Once I really started doing that, I would say I've probably, 3 times my income. I started my own business. Just been very blessed in that, and I wouldn't attribute that to me and my own natural ability. I would attribute that to that, along with just being blessed for what I've done.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing, that snippet of your life there, with us so far. See, one thing that you mentioned, Bobby, was self-awareness. I thought leadership was all just, knowing what people are supposed to do and delegating and letting them know, their role. And if they don't, well, then it's their loss or they get reprimanded for that. Was I wrong?
I would say, yeah, I probably started out the same way, and I quickly realized that is absolutely not leadership. That's maybe management. Maybe you could call that management. You probably call that more supervision. And you're going to find out very quickly as a leader, if all you have is authority behind you because of your position, you're not going to make it very far. It's the same whether you're in a family and you're leading a family, or you're in the professional life leading a team or leading a company or an organization. And it's the same whether you're leading a group at church, or even, I was playing football, and one of the leaders of a football team. And it didn't matter where I was in those groups, but if you can't influence people through the way that you live and act, then you're not going to get very much out of the people that you lead. It's much more about the influence than it is about the authority.
Quite like that, because part of what you started discovering along the journey was self-awareness. How important is, first of all, finding yourself and then bringing your best self to the people that you tend to lead? Because the last time I was on a plane, I heard the lady going, you want to put your mask on first before you can tend to other people there. Maybe you can comment or maybe elaborate on that, why you mentioned self-awareness as part of the journey that you then took to learn how to lead first yourself and then those that were around you.
Absolutely. So when it comes to leadership, productivity, the very first thing that you have to do is understand your strengths and your weaknesses. Being self-aware means I know not just the things that I'm good at or that I excel in, but it also means knowing the things that are my weaknesses, the things that I'm just not very strong at, or maybe even the things that are my, what you would call maybe the traps, the things that are easily, I think there's a verse in the Bible that says easily beset you. So things, things that are more temptations for you, understanding what those things are so that you can put things in place to avoid the things that will cause you to not have success, but then also lean into the things that will give you success. And as a leader, just because you're leading somebody doesn't mean that you stop doing those things that you're strong in and that have gotten you to where you are. It means that you know where your weaknesses are and you get people around you that can fill those holes. And it takes a leader who's self-aware to be able to do that. And then it also takes a leader who is comfortable being able to say that I'm not good at that and is humble enough to admit those weaknesses and allow other people around them to shine. And that's when you have a team that really begins to be successful.
Absolutely. I really believe that, because if people can see who you are, what it is that you are presenting to them, not only will they want to aspire to become that, but you are now literally leading by example, because you can't be that leader who's telling people to stop smoking while you've got a cigarette behind your back. And it just doesn't work like that, because people are not necessarily going to follow what it is that you say, but what it is that you do. So I see now where the self-awareness piece comes in play there. And also, being a leader, you need to constantly be learning new things or relearning certain things. And I've noticed you as a leader, like you mentioned, you are reading 20 to 30 books a year. First of all, that's a lot of reading. And second of all, what is it that you hope to achieve with, such a momentous task?
So for me, I learned that there was so much knowledge. There's no way I could gain even close to the amount of knowledge that I would want to gain, that I would need even in a lifetime. But if I can find the people who have that knowledge and I can read their path, their mistakes, their successes, then I can learn from that and I can gain those lessons without having to go through life and live all of that and learn it on my own. There are two types of people when it comes to learning. There's the people who can learn from other people, but then there's the people who have to learn the hard lessons or have to learn things the hard way. And there are some people who just, it takes them longer. And I feel like I was one of these people where early on I was wanting to do everything my way, and I felt almost like I couldn't let go, or maybe I had to have more of that control, and I couldn't admit that there were things that I didn't know or that I wasn't good at. And it takes a lot of self-awareness, and it takes some self-confidence to be able to say, you know what, I don't know that. And then something you mentioned was about inspiring the people around you. It inspires them, but it also gives them some permission to not be great at everything. It gives them the ability to say, yeah, I'm strong in this area, but I'm not in this area. And they don't have to feel some guilt or shame about not being able to complete a task, or maybe not being as good at a task as somebody else on the team, where that can really cause division when you have these leaders who are very much about themselves and very much about, oh, because I'm the leader, I'm the one who is going to do everything, or I'm going to control everything. And they don't go out of their way to try to understand what their weaknesses are or what other people are good at, and then leverage those and allow people to grow in those things. And so as a leader, you get the most out of your team when you are being the example, yes, of somebody who can say, yeah, those are my weaknesses or those are my strengths, and you can show that self-awareness, but then also help other people find those things themselves and then give them the permission to go out and lean into the good things that they're great at, but then not have to lean into as hard the things that they're not great at. And my business and the things that I do are very much about being purpose-based and people-led. So I want to make sure that people understand their natural gifts and abilities, their purpose. And then I want to focus on that personal, that people aspect. And that's one of the approaches that I've taken that has really set me apart from a lot of other people in the businesses that I do and the things that I'm involved in. When you get in the construction industry and you get into process improvement, process engineering, and quality engineering, it's so much about systems, and the people are kind of left behind. But when you start with a people led approach and you focus on the people first, the systems come. And everything, whether in life, is really all about people. We're relational beings. And so I can have the greatest systems in the world, but if I don't have the confidence of the people around me, I'm not going to achieve anything. I have to have them coming along beside me.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Because if you don't have the systems and you've got a lot of people, then they're going to be sitting around twiddling their thumbs and not producing and not being productive. Or if you got, the people but don't have the systems, and it all just sort of works like that. Now it starts to make sense so much, the whole reading, because once you start learning all of these things, the more you learn, the more you now have an understanding of the whole picture of everything else that needs to be happening. And that's why comprehensive systems like this, start making sense, because some people might think, wow, we're very, people based, but they don't have purpose or things of that nature. It's not all matching together. Now, while you were talking, you mentioned something about you being a proponent of Proverbs. And I remember reading as a kid, Proverbs chapter 1 says something along the lines, the fear of God is the beginning of all knowledge. But a lot of fools despise wisdom and discipline. And I can imagine if you're meditating on, wisdom and experts like this every single day for, 31 days, you obviously create something remarkable. Now, just walk us through some of the things that you have married the stuff that you have read and put in real life experience, because some people would say, I've read about that, or I've seen that happening, but I've never really had an experience to match the two together.
Sure. So you mentioned how the Bible says there in Proverbs 1, it says the beginning of, it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. It also says in another place, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so in my mind, it was, okay, if I believe that life began with a creator, if I believe that it was intelligent design, which I do, to me, it was always easier to believe, and I understand that not everybody has the same viewpoint and the same worldview that I do, but I always believed it was easier and more clear to me to understand that this was all created and didn't happen by accident. It would take me more faith to believe that it all came about by accident than to think that it was something that was intelligent design. And so when it tells me the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, it's not saying that I have to be afraid that if I make one wrong step, God is going to pound me, or he's some, guy up in the sky that's waiting to just stomp me every time I do something wrong. The Bible says that he's a loving father. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a house where I had a loving dad, and he exemplified what it meant to be a loving father. And to me, that was somebody who wanted me to learn the right way. He wanted me to learn the right lessons to put me in the best opportunity to succeed in life. And so here the Bible is telling me if I have that type of fear and reverence for God, then that's the beginning of knowledge. Why? Because then I start to look to the one who created everything, who is the ultimate source of wisdom and intelligence. And so if I can tap into this infinite source of intelligence, then I can learn from that. And here I have a book that was written by Solomon, who was, the Bible claims to be the most wise man to ever live. And it's almost as if you've given me this book of life hacks. So here's the one who created life, and he's saying, here's how to live it. And it's, to me, it was like, okay, so if I go out and I, buy some piece of furniture at IKEA, and I come home, like a lot of us do, we say, oh, I can figure it out by the pieces. And I just go ahead and start trying to put it together on my own. And then at the end, it either doesn't work or I've got parts left over. And it's like, oh man, if I would have just read the instructions to begin with, this thing would have gone so much better. And I started to look at Proverbs that way. Is, I think at the end of my life, I'm going to leave such a better legacy if I can read one chapter a day, pull one truth out that I can meditate on and try to apply that to my life. It doesn't mean I'm trying to memorize the entire thing or I'm trying to make the whole thing work for me right then. This life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so I need one little piece that I can take every day and I can add that to my life. And so it started with that. And that began to get me to say, okay, there's a lot of other knowledge out there that I don't have, and I can read these books from these people and I can apply that. Some other things are, the Bible talks about how if you are in agreement with somebody, or say you owe somebody something, you should go out to them and make sure of that thing. And actually says, go and make sure thy friend. And so what it's saying is, if I have an agreement, I need to make sure that I'm cultivating that relationship and I'm keeping that relationship good. I need to make sure that I'm in good standing with these people, because that's more wise than to just let things go. So the way I started to manifest that in my life was, I started to make sure I'm constantly following up with people. I'm making contact with people, my business contacts, my friends. I started just taking my drive time to send texts. Not necessarily texting while I'm driving, but just the voice text. Hey, thinking about you. How are you doing? And I'll send, 10 or 20 of those a week. And I started to realize how much stronger my relationships were getting because I wasn't letting them die. And so that was another thing that I took from it. The Bible has a lot of financial advice in the Proverbs. So I started to understand there were investments that I needed to make. The Bible says, don't become surety for thy neighbor. So I took that and I actually said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to co-sign any loans. And to me, that was something that was kept me out of a lot of bad financial situations as I lived my life. So those are just a few things that I took from that. The Bible says, go to the ant, thou sluggard, and watch how they prepare their meat in the winter, so that they don't have to go through or in the summer, so they don't have to go through the entire winter without food. And so the Bible was telling us, and in many portions of Proverbs tells us, to go to nature to find lessons in life that you can apply. And so I took that specific lesson to say, okay, you know what? I need to stop procrastinating, and I need to make sure that I have the things done today that I need to do to make sure that tomorrow is going to be okay. But then I started watching nature videos and I started watching nature shows, and man, there's so much that you can learn from just looking at nature. And the Bible is telling us that. And I start to look at the way that we design computers, and then I start to look at the way that our brain works. And it's almost like we've taken the blueprint that God gave us with our brain, and we started to build computers the same way. We look at cameras and then the way that our eye works. And if we just look at nature, I was reading a book not too long ago about the subconscious mind, the power of the subconscious mind. And one of the things that it talks about is how trees in the forest use the forest bed to then interlock their roots and the trees will actually take care of the other ones. So if a tree starts to die, all of the trees around it will start to send nutrients through the soil to this one dying tree. And our subconscious mind taps into infinite intelligence the same way. And the more that we think about things and meditate on things and open our mind up to things, the more that we're tapping into this, the way that God has designed life, and we start to get nutrients from things that are around us. And so there's all things like that I've learned, that I've gotten from Proverbs and these other books that I've read, and I've applied to my life, and I've seen the Lord bless in that, I believe.
I like that. You see, so much of what you said has so much profound truth. I really believe we're here to, if we want to live the best life we want to, we need to learn how to do that. And like you so eloquently say, you know, we can take a note from nature. You know, nature has all things figured out, the seasons, how soil is the actual component that trees need in order to breathe, and the fact that the sun hits the leaves and that turns into some sort of fruit. Like for real, that whole you know, thought process is just out of this world in the way things work. And some guy would have looked at a bird flying and then just from that alone created a whole airplane, and now we're connecting the whole world together just because it is something that was derived from how nature actually exists. So it's just so remarkable that so many people decide not to burn any calories trying to learn and figure out all of these things. But you have maybe gone on and done the whole IKEA for them and distilled all of this into 4 pillars that you have created that help other people who don't want to venture into watching nature videos or reading all of these things. But you've, you know, tell us about this unique 4-pillar system to productivity that you've actually developed from, you know, all your findings. And yeah, basically, how does this actually change or revolutionize company cultures?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually, that's been an evolving thing for me. And purpose, of course, is one of the first pillars of this process, and understanding our purpose. And it's actually kind of morphed from those 4 pillars now into a very much purpose-based understanding what those things are. And I'll kind of go through that here just a little bit. So it all begins with understanding, if we're talking about from a professional standpoint. So when I'm teaching professionally, this is what I'm going to teach. When I'm teaching people and mentoring people, I've been mentoring now for about 24, 25 years, young people and young adults, teenagers. One of the things that I teach is this: if you want to become a better person, you find the things that you're weak at and you get better at those things. That's going to make you a better person. But if I want to become better professionally, if I want to advance in my career, I need to find the things that I'm strong in, and I need to lean into those things. I need to focus on those things. So our natural abilities that we have are a lot of what feed into our purpose in our work. Here, about 3 years ago, I took over an engineering group for a construction company. And as the pre-construction engineer, I inherited a team that was very dysfunctional, and the company was in an extremely bad place culturally. And it was underperforming. This was a team of executives, and I had 2 people who just weren't showing up to work at all. And I didn't expect that. And it would be days I wouldn't hear from them. And as I started to talk to them, I started to understand it was because they had been so beat down by the culture in the company. which, by the way, culture is another one of the pillars. So what I started to realize was the people on this team weren't being used in a way that would leverage their natural gifts and talents. So unfortunately, with these two people, I wasn't able to get the culture turned around fast enough and wasn't able to reclaim them, and ended up losing them from my team. And I had to rebuild the team. And so what I did was I took the tasks that we were doing on a daily basis that needed to be done for the projects that we had going on. I took the clients that we had, and then I took the people that we had on our team. And I started to say, okay, what natural abilities do these people have? And I jumped over the whole client portion and the position portion of our team and went straight to the tasks. And I started to align people with the tasks that I had based on what they were naturally gifted to do. And this was a purpose-based approach. So once I did that, to make that long story short, eventually our team completely turned around. The culture changed because people were much more energetic. When you're working in your natural gifts, your natural talents, and that's the majority of the tasks that you do on a daily basis, you're energized, you're joyful, you're fulfilled in your work. You want to be there. I'm not calling you wondering where you're at. You're not disappearing on me for days, because you know that when you come to work, you're going to be doing work that energizes you and that you enjoy. So I started giving out tasks based on that. As I learned this and I was doing this, at the same time, a book came out from an author named Patrick Lencioni. And he was all about this, what he called working genius model. And him and his team created this model. And he started to realize that all work goes through three phases. It goes through the ideation phase, to the activation phase, and then ultimately the implementation phase. So it basically goes through a period of creating the work, then a period of organizing the work and getting people involved, and then the completion of the work. And within those three phases, there were two characteristics of people and the way that they work in each of those phases. And it goes from wonder and invention in the ideation phase to discernment and enablement, or discernment and galvanizing in the activation phase, and then enablement and tenacity in the completion phase. And it was basically the same thing that I had been doing, but it was just articulated in a way that I hadn't articulated it. And I just grabbed onto it. Again, this was another thing that he did all of the legwork for me. I didn't have to do it at that point. He figured it out. So I started to implement this in my purpose-based approach. And I have seen cultures turn around. I've seen people turn around from this. And I've seen so much success doing that and helping people understand that, you know what, you're a wanderer and a discerner, which is what I am. And you're not an enabler or someone with tenacity, meaning I love to ask the big questions. I love to live at the 30,000 foot view. If I have to get in the day-to-day in the details, every task that I do, I'm going to be extremely frustrated. I actually saw this happen in my own life last year. I was the engineering manager for a company. And when I got in, I was taking care of the entire team. So I was working at that high level. I was managing our clients and the projects. I wasn't in the day-to-day. But then over the course of the work and the way that the company had changed, I ended up having to every day get into the actual blueprints and go through all of the detail of the measurements and make sure the right material was in there. And that was just the majority of my day. And I burned out very quickly. And that's what happens if you're spending most of your time or the majority of your time. It doesn't mean you'll never have to work in your frustration. Sometimes you will. But if you have to spend the majority of your time there, you're going to be frustrated. Work is going to disappoint you, and you're going to eventually burn out. And that's what happened to me. And so I've seen this happen to other people. And what it is people don't understand many times what their purpose is. I identified it very quickly. I was doing something that wasn't my purpose. It wasn't in my geniuses. It wasn't in my natural abilities to do that. And so I became frustrated very quickly because my work wasn't energizing me. It wasn't fulfilling me anymore. And so that's the first pillar, that purpose pillar. Culture is another one of those pillars. And like I said, this is evolving right now. So those last two pillars are still kind of changing and evolving. But that purpose and the culture are two of the basic things that you have to have in an organization in order for you to see ultimately success.
Quite like that, because so many people don't quite know where to start, especially when it comes to company culture. Case in point, fish do not see the water that they swim in, and neither can we see the air that we breathe. And people will only notice and discern whether an environment or a work culture is toxic, maybe when they now have that sickening feeling that they have to attend work on a Monday. Now, you have done extensive research around this, and there's also highlighted studies that I came across on your site by the Gallup and Columbia University. Can you maybe elaborate the actual impact that toxic work cultures has on companies and on productivity? Because some people don't quite get or grasp the implications of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the effect that company culture has, this is where that whole people-based part comes in, and that is your environment has to be an environment where people feel safe, where people feel encouraged, and where people feel that they are doing something that matters. Starting out with just people feel safe in a toxic culture, people come to work and they're either afraid to speak up, so you end up losing a lot of ideas, you end up losing a lot of experience because people don't want to speak their mind, or they don't want to say maybe an idea that they have, because in a toxic culture, if they say something that isn't right, they may get called out. I was in a company and experienced this where I was making a presentation, and if the CEO didn't agree with or like what you were saying, he would literally just turn his back and start talking to you right in the middle of a presentation where there's other people listening to that. And it's your material, the thing that they need to know to do their job that you've worked on. Literally, he would turn around and just start talking audibly right there in the middle of the meeting to somebody else about it and completely exclude you like you weren't even there.
And not even give you credit.
No, not give you credit, not say anything, not say excuse me or nothing like that. And that was the kind of the height of just a toxic culture. Everybody there felt like they were on eggshells all of the time. So everybody was watching their back. Nobody would go out and take a risk. That's how we have success. You have to have people who take some level of risk to innovate, to get new ideas out there, to get fresh projects going. And that wasn't happening. So the company was just very stagnant, and it was just an absolute horrible culture. Thankfully, I was able to shield a lot of that from my own team. And then they did some reorganizing and took somebody out of my team and put them directly under the CEO. And she came to me about 3 weeks later and said, "You were keeping me from so much." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm so sorry you're having to deal with that now." She's like, "I didn't realize how much you were shielding us from until I started working directly and reporting directly to that person." And I can honestly say at this point, of all of the talent that that company has had, I'm talking 30 or 40 people over the last few years, 2 of them are still there. And so that company has lost so much talent because of the leadership and the way that the company is run. So that's the first thing, is people just have to feel safe to be able to express themselves. They have to be able to disagree. And that's another thing that a lot of companies are missing. When they have a toxic culture, they don't have any disagreement. Disagreement is necessary. Conflict is necessary, but it has to be done in a way that is productive and not negative. I have to be able to look at you in a staff meeting and say, "Hey, I disagree with this because of these reasons." Because there might be something that I see coming down the tracks that you don't see because you're not in the day-to-day stuff that I am. So it's important, especially for a CEO or top leadership, to have people that feel like they can express a dissenting view or a different opinion, and they won't get blowback from that. And then they got to be able to feel safe to be able to do that with their colleagues as well, and know that these things aren't going to be talked about behind their back, or that they're going to get backstabbed because they disagreed with somebody in a meeting. So that's also necessary. And in a toxic culture, that doesn't happen. Then beyond that, beyond the safety, people need to feel that they're being used properly, and they need to be energized and fulfilled in their work, which we already talked about. And then there is a heightened version of that. And here is where I think a lot of companies stop short of this. And this is something that I really try to push, is not only do you need to align somebody's purpose and their pursuits, which is their natural abilities with the work that they do, but then if you can align their passions with that, and it can go beyond just their natural abilities into things that they're very interested in, when it can go beyond the, okay, this is my job, but we're actually doing something that matters bigger than myself or bigger than the company. I'm not just working to put money in the CEO's pocket or the owner's pocket, but I'm actually making a difference. Then you go from that fulfilling work to more of a calling. And this is where you really want your employees and your team members to be. You want them to feel like what they're doing is a calling, like they're made to do this. And the only way you can get that is when you align the tasks that they do with their natural abilities and then with their passions. If they're passionate about people, then make their job something that affects people. If they're passionate about tech, make sure their job involves doing something in tech or maybe has some effect on tech. And there's creative ways you can do this, but when you can make it bigger than just them, and you can make it more about something larger, then it becomes more of a calling, and they feel like, hey, I'm making a difference. I want to go to work today, because if I don't, it's not just I'm missing a paycheck. It's I'm not affecting the world the way that I want to.
Right. I like that, and you're giving us so much to work with here. It's amazing. But while you were talking, Bobby, and indulge me if you can, with this. See, I was born in Africa, and in Africa we have a whole different way of being taught how to be a leader, and it comes in the form of a rite of passage, where you're basically called in by tribal leaders, and you're probably a kid age of 13 to like 16, and then they call you in, and then they, straighten you up as a kid, and you're proverbially tapped on the shoulder that it is your turn to lead now. You're no longer a baby, you're an adult now. This then brings a sense of maturity, a sense of ownership, and a sense of belonging, and that sort of why built into that ceremony in and of itself. All right. Yes, on National Geographic, I heard you talking about looking at natural videos. They showcase maybe the extreme ones, but there's the everyday, commercial, safe ones where you just sit around seeing kumbaya, but you walk away a different person. And it's like a pattern break where somebody now understands, okay, I used to be that kid who, if I'm sleeping on the couch, my parents would carry me to bed. But now I'm an adult. They'll leave me. If I just pass out where I am, nobody's going to look after me after that. And I'm sensing and seeing, based on what you went through and what you did, you had to learn leadership. You had to walk into this, and then you had to arm yourself, with all the extensive reading and solidifying that with a whole spiritual aspect to this, that you sort of took yourself into somewhat of a rite of passage, and you're now passing that on to other leaders who are seemingly fully grown babies because nobody has told them, hey, it's your turn to lead now. They've just been given that realm, or they just came from college just because of their qualifications. They're just given some sort of position which so happens to make them a leader. I don't know. You can maybe comment on my little discovery here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought of it like that. But so you're giving me some new stuff to think about here. But yeah, looking back at that, there was a lot that went into building me to who I am today. And yes, very much so. I feel like I probably did go through a rite of passage early on. I mentioned that we had our first child, and I had to go to work very, early on in life. And, from the time I was 14, I've had a job. We had a large family too. I have 6 siblings, and my family didn't grow up with very much. And so I went out at 14, and I got a job so that I could provide, a lot for myself. And at the age of 18, I graduated. My wife and I graduated on June 2nd. We had our first baby on July 2nd, and we got married on August 2nd of the same year. So all in the same summer. And then I went straight to work. And by the time we were 26, we had 5 kids. So as a young person, my wife and I, looking back, we were still growing ourselves, and we were still trying to figure out who we were. And we were raising babies and kids. And that really forced me to start to say, okay, I'm no longer just leading myself here, but now I've got other people who are dependent on me. And I had to learn very quickly that my actions, the things that I do, are influencing these people that look up to me, that depend on me. And I started to see a lot of similarities from that to what I was doing professionally at the time as well. Then I left the supervisory job that I was in, and I went to work for myself as a contractor in another field. And it was very quick that they started to use me in a leadership role. And here I was again, I was training people and mentoring people. And it was that growing up so quick that I had to do coming right out of high school that really put me in the position that I was, that I had to take the lessons that I was learning, I had to learn them, and then I had to impart them and get them to other people. And now going into organizations, seeing leaders that I can see that they're in a similar situation. Sometimes you have leaders who were put there because they were great at a job that they were doing, but they really don't have a lot of leadership experience. Or maybe they're just the most tenured person there. So they got put in a position of leadership and they don't really have the tools yet. So it's taking them back through those same lessons that I've learned and understanding that, hey, you can't just bark orders at people and expect to get the results that you want. You have to influence these people and you have to make a difference. You have to inspire them to be able to do things. And the only way you can do that is going all the way back full circle to what we were talking about when we first started, is you have to learn about yourself and you have to understand yourself first. And once you understand who you are and you understand how to figure out who you are and learn what your natural abilities are and learn what your strengths are, then you can walk other people through that same process of learning who they are and having that self-awareness. And then you can start to get into the leadership things and understanding, whether it's financial stuff or some other business thing or different business models. We can take you through all that. But what you really need to learn first is you need to learn people. Because like I said, we're all relational beings. I'm going to have the people behind me first that believe in me, that I can ask to do something and I can influence them by who I am, not by the position that I'm in, because that only goes so far.
Fantastic. Now, Bobby, for the uninitiated, all right, those that haven't actually crossed the chasm, how can individuals or teams or organizations connect with you? First of all, maybe to speak, because I think you'll be a very good speaker. You've done that over 1,000 times from what I've seen, or maybe workshops, or maybe coaching or consult with you.
Absolutely. They can always reach me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active right now. My LinkedIn page, Bobby Neal Jackson. You can find me there. You can also email me at bobby.jackson@synergyworksconsulting.com. That's my consulting company. You can go to synergyworksconsulting.net. I'm still working on the .com. There were some issues there with the registry, so I'm working on getting that. But they can go to my website as well, synergyworksconsulting.net. They can reach me there. And then also, like I said, on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. I'll definitely make sure that all those links are in the show notes below. And obviously people can get a hold of you. Wow. What a journey, man. Like, you would think just looking at people, everything seems all normal. But I gotta ask, man, what's with the sign behind you, that Mark Twain quote? And while you're answering that, have you actually found that day, or are we yet to discover the day?
So I'll give the quote first. My wife actually bought this for me for my office. It says the two most important days of your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. And to me, that was probably one of my favorite quotes. And yes, I have found out why. And it's interesting because it's not always the same. What I'm finding is as we go through life, that purpose for a lot of people doesn't stay the same. I think for some people, they find their purpose very early and they get on it and they know it and they're there until the day that they die. For me, that's been an evolving thing. And there are times in my life where I see my purpose in one part is different than another part. And so, yes, I have found that out. And overall, my purpose is to make a difference in the life of people. And I do that through helping them understand what their natural abilities are, and then also understand what their spiritual gifts are.
Absolutely. I quite like that a whole lot, because obviously not only are you a guide in people's lives, you're actually leading them and showing them what is possible moving forward. And I'm hoping that people that are watching this video right now are definitely going to watch this back so that they can really retrace your steps and learn what it is that has actually made you the person that you are right now. And if you're a young person who's also just getting started, and then this is probably the first video you came across, leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. Just like Bobby, you had to start your leadership journey as a young man. And as you have said, Bobby, if I got you correctly, if you bought a pair of shoes to wear to your graduation, the second time you're going to wear that pair of shoes was to your baby's baptism. All right. Now, if you would have come across a video like this, what sort of advice would you give to your younger self? And what would it be, considering the wealth of experience that you've now gained over the years?
Sure. It would be that you start very early gaining as much knowledge and understanding as you can, and humble yourself to be able to learn from other people's lessons and not have to learn everything the hard way.
Wow.
One of the things that I've seen in my life, I don't have a degree. So I've been an engineering manager. I've been a pre-construction engineer. I've been a quality engineer. I've been in the leadership group, an executive on an executive team of an organization. Now I own my own consulting company, and I don't have a college degree. I went out and started learning. My degree is in life and life experience. And I got my degree through reading and learning from other people and basically self-educating. A year and a half ago now, I sat on a meeting with 3 MIT engineers and had to explain why I designed something the way that I did and had to defend my design. Now, for somebody who doesn't have an engineering degree, to do that, that was a very daunting experience for me. But when I walked out of that room, they all agreed with me that I designed it right. And that to me was just a testament of this concept of learning and being able to learn from other people's experience and being able to educate yourself to a level that goes beyond anything that I ever thought that I could. And what I would call my degree has only cost me, $1,000 in books. Not a $150,000 MIT degree.
plus a hex debt. Don't forget that.
That's correct.
Because that comes with interest and compounding and everything else that comes along with it.
That's true.
Now, Bobby, this has been amazing. Just sitting here with you, I think you and me can just sit on a fire, talk all we can. But I just got a signal from my team that we're running out of tape here. And I I would love to have you back on the show. Now, you brought an interesting aspect of self-education because somebody would have just watched this video. I don't know, it's probably 45, 50 minutes and they've learned so much, but it's taken you 25 years and a lot more to actually come to just sit for 25 minutes and really, really lay out somebody else's life. And this is where I'm a really big proponent of studying and learning and self-educating. And I, like yourself, do not even have, a marketing qualification or a degree, so to speak. My degree is in talking to people. And I think we've created what I feel like is one of the most profound episodes on my show. And I really, really appreciate you for that. But knowing what you know now and knowing the effect and the power of laying down information, when can we expect a book from you?
That is a great question, man. I've got so many ideas for books, but I'm working on a couple different books right now, book ideas. I would say probably in the next couple years. I don't have a set date right now, but yeah, sometime in the next couple of years, I'm planning on having one out.
Fantastic. And Bobby, as soon as that has happened, get your team to get in touch with my team and we can actually talk about it again. I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the show today.
Man, it's meant so much to me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate definitely all of your kind words. And I would absolutely be back if you felt that that was a value.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. It was a deep dive into the world of leadership, productivity, and positive work cultures with incredible Bobby Neal Jackson. I appreciate you for sharing all your insights, man, and the strategies that actually engineer true success. And never, apologize for not having gone to college, because a whole lot of the people that have gone to college, all they did was come back with a degree and hard skills, which can now be replaced by artificial intelligence. You go on and tell me how to download a hug. This is exactly what we've offered our audience right now. A simple hug. If you're working in a toxic culture, just forward this message to your boss, your leader, or whoever is in charge, so that they can reach out to Bobby and they can actually, start leading and be productive and, help other people have a happier existence, because just creating that sort of environment is what the world needs right now, right? So to our viewers, just remember, if you're looking to level up your leadership or maybe amplify your productivity or foster culture growth, Bobby is the man to guide you. I will be putting all those links and the show notes below. Until next time, please help me thank Bobby for his time. I don't know what time it is there in the States for you, but I appreciate you sitting here with me. And don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because you never know what you're going to find. Bye for now.